Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Library Podcast. I'm Dama Tamanawala, my co-host, Garrett McGillivray. And joining us today is the founder of Anthem Properties, Eric Carlson. Thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Awesome. A little about you guys. So I've got some high-level stats just so the audience we can bring them up to speed, especially we got a lot of Toronto listeners. 20,000 homes, 9 million in commercial space, constructed, owned, right?
Yeah.
Mix of office, industrial,
retail.
And retail, 8,500 acres of land, owned, developed on, the whole...
In the pipeline. We add it up. We make the numbers as big as we can. But they're generally true, with plus or minus 5%.
Yes.
Round up.
Yeah. I'm a developer. Of course I do.
Yeah.
Right? Like round down.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
You get to the public hearing. You got to get the pro forma to work, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And assets you guys are active in Edmonton, Calgary, Sacramento, Vancouver, right?
Yes. And Toronto. This is quite recent. We just opened an office here. It's huge. It's got one employee and 1,400 square feet. So,
wow.
Yeah. So we're
room to grow.
Yeah. Room to grow to 8 people, right? So, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Amazing.
We're here during the real estate forum in December, and I've been coming here for decades to beg for money and or go to a forum, and I thought this is like center ice. This is where all the capital is. Some of the I would say this: the smartest real estate people in the country generally are here, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of got to be here. If you're a serious real estate player, you should have a Toronto presence. I mean, I don't really mean that to the world, but to me, I said that to myself. Yeah. So here we are. Yeah. So we're going to, crawl, walk, run here.
So I don't mean
to buy a house by the end of the year, something like that.
Really?
Not for me to live here, to rent out, So
okay.
Yeah. A small asset was my point,
Put down
get part of the boom.
Yeah. Put down a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. But the core strategy is not go after Toronto real estate yet.
No. The core strategy is just to describe the company in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
That's high level. So we founded in 1991. So, you layer on, you grow a bit each year, it adds up, right? And so that's why those numbers are what they are. But I mean, compared to large companies, it's still not much, but we're motivated and we like to do lots of different things. So we're a very diverse company. We like diversification. We like it on the asset side of the balance sheet. We like it geographically. We like it with respect to sources of capital. We like it with respect to the people that work at our company, right? We share values in common as people, but if you have individual ways of thinking, 3 people can get in a room, assuming they're not working from home. That's a whole other kettle of fish, and they can exchange views and you come up with better ideas, right? So, and then on the asset side, it's great. Like different markets do different things at different times. Different asset classes do different things at different times.
Yeah.
So something's always working. So 5 years into a diversified real estate strategy, you realize something else. Something is always not working as well, right? So you're always managing something that's going, and you're managing way out of issues. Not always, because sometimes the whole world works, but and sometimes the whole world doesn't work, but not for very long.
Right.
So we really like being able to do these different things. What we found is that by having a common platform of systems, processes, and culture, those can apply to any asset class. A real estate culture, a vibrant organizational culture, a learning culture. But then, you start specializing in how do you build a concrete high rise versus a wood frame apartment building versus a steel frame, shopping center. Public hearing, the political approval process is the same in every city. It's the same mayor. I was going to put in a little something in front of the same dickhead mayor or the same great mayor. It depends on the city. Right? Yeah. And so all those things that real estate has in common, you can share across a single platform and then specialize within that. And then you have a lot of fun because, you can build high rises and then instead of doing single point towers, you can put something in the bottom of the podium, like some retail, create some vibrancy, do multi-phase projects. And, by taking our retail capability we had, for example, with the rental business, which we turned into the condo business, which was good at the time and then ended up being stupid afterwards. But anyway, you can create great urban places, right? And then it's more fun, but also gives you something better to lease or to sell, right? So diversification is key, and that's why we're in those different cities. And just to explain that in a little more detail, We don't do absolutely everything from soup to nuts. And I like to think that within any asset class, we're pretty disciplined. So we have 3 groups: vertical development, land and house building, and then investment portfolio. And back to vertical, within that we do high rise, low rise, and commercial. And the commercial we develop is mostly food anchored retail, and more warehouses like industrial properties, some business parks. And then on the land and house building, that's where your suburban community development, you buy like a quarter section of land from a farmer after spending 3 years drinking 18,000 cups of shitty coffee with them and developing a rapport. And then you take it through the approval process for like years, and then you put in sewer pipes and roads, and you build lots, and you sell the lots to builders. Sometimes you sell them to yourself to build houses. Sometimes you sell some to yourself to build a shopping center to anchor the community. That's a great business, right? And then you've just said an investment portfolio. I'm almost done. Okay, you got like that's where our food anchored retail is. We say retail and office. To be clear, we don't do office really. Those are the dentist office and the chiropractors that are tacked onto the end or on the second floor of a pad. And then we have, and that's the whole fluke that we're not into the downtown stuff. Again, that's another kettle of fish, right?
It's not doing great.
Yeah, no, and that's like there for the grace of God, go I. It sort of rings in my head a little bit. And we got an emerging sort of multifamily rental portfolio. So we shift from condos back to rental. And then that's where we try to accumulate warehouses and industrial rents. So it's 3 little business units within the investment portfolio. You add that up, that's like a lot of overhead. That's 535 people. One of the best accounting systems known to man. We love accounting in my company. You got to keep track of what you're doing. You can't just add up invoices at the end of the job and hope you made money. You got to sort of do it every day, every week, every month for years. Make sure you've got it all added up, right? So we love accountants and financial analysts. It's huge. But really, what I like, salespeople and leasing people, because without revenue, you got nothing to account for, right? So.
Beautiful. But why don't we put it right at the beginning of the episode? Is there anything you want to draw attention to right now? We got a lot of broker listeners.
Yeah, there's the industry going and the markets in general, and then there's what Anthem's doing about it. So just high level, like it's not the best year. Last year, second half of 2022, first half of 2020, not the best year to be a broker, right? Good thing about being old is you've been around a little bit. I can say that now. I used to pretend, like when I started the company, I used to pretend to be 50 when I was like 30. That's hard to pull off because I looked like I was 12, right? But at some point you do get older and you experience stuff. So I started in this business in 1982. Prime rate was 23%. A real estate deal, they just didn't happen. The industry was bankrupt, right? So actually I became an accountant. That's why I like accountants. Okay. It was the only job I could get, right? The audit, they look backwards, go, yeah, it was a good year. Man, it wasn't a good year. Oh, you can't say that on your program. You can edit that out, right? But it was like you had to, I needed a job, right? So
you were born and raised in Vancouver.
Yeah, North End. There's a clear distinction. Vancouver's where all the feats live, and North End's where all the real people live. Mountain biking, skiing and stuff like that. Right? Yeah. So I love the North Shore. Except my mother lived there, so I had to leave for a while. But we made things right. In the end, yeah. She made me play in a band, right? Not a rock band. I do that on my own, right? She made me play like in an orchestra, right? And I play percussion, right? It was just like a triangle, a cymbal, a bass drum, a snare drum. It's not all at the same time like it is in jazz and rock. So I didn't like that. So the good news was the orchestra leader said, well, I do have a shortage of tuba players. So I've talked to your mother and we've agreed you're going to play the sousaphone.
Oh my God.
So when I was 12, I looked like I was 5 and to pick up on that theme. And so I had to carry a 45-pound sousaphone, like in parades and stuff like that. It was, So 4 notes. So like even I could figure out how to play it. Right. But, it was a tough go. I had a tough childhood just from that perspective. But in all seriousness, I had a phenomenal childhood. Growing up in North End in my era was like awesome, right? Like it was sort of like you guys are too young to remember the show Leave It to Beaver. You ever see it on syndicated TV?
My dad has shown that to me.
Yeah. Like that's the kind of how I thought my life was, right? You come home, there's mom and dad, and there's liver and boiled potatoes and green beans, for dinner. But it's okay. You have HP sauce and ketchup, right?
Right.
Yeah. It was an era of bad cooking. It was Betty Crocker cookbooks, right? Like how do you? They sort of was post World War II era. It was like everyone was sort of like processed food's actually a luxury, so it's a special treat to have fake cheese and powdered milk and crap like that.
Milk with dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
no.
Oh, yeah, totally. So I still, don't you guys do that?
No.
What do you have with dinner? Drink like pop? You know,
Athletic
you're old now.
greens,
Wine,
multivitamins.
Multivitamins,
multivitamin water. Great. Yeah, I'll take the milk. Oh, so it's real estate we're talking about, right?
Yeah. So it was
key
1982.
message.
You were an accountant.
Yeah, so I'm saying to the industry and to people like that are sort of in your space, where you're getting paid contingently for delivering results. When people get paralyzed, they don't move. It's hard to do deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I think that for a long time post 9/11, when we started the era of permanently printing money and quantitative easing, we got away with pricing asset prices going up, but having no inflation to keep interest rates low because globalization really helped to keep open up supply chains, technology innovation. I mean, first calculator I bought was in 1974 was $150.
My God.
You get that stuff for free with a box of cereal, right? So that helped keep inflation in check. So we kind of got away with something which was everything was good. And if you're in the hard asset business, that was the stuff that inflated, and so the velocity of deals went up, and there's all this, fluid money. So I think that the younger generation got used to you get a listing, you sell it, it's a 30-day look, 30-day close, unless it's faster, and you
10
get
offers,
it. Yeah.
no problem.
Look at my day. I remember Strawberry Hill Shopping Center in Surrey, British Columbia, being listed by my old buddy Bob Levine, who's not at Colliers. He's at Avison, prior to that Knowlton. Really old guys who remember those firms, Knowlton. And he's a very good advisor, and he had that thing listed, tied up like 5 times. It was on the market for 18 months, and in the end, it didn't sell. He lost the listing. And how hard did he work to not sell that thing? And that was pretty common. It was a big party when somebody removed subjects because not only you make money, you actually you're about to get a deal done, right? So we were kind of in that era. We're just not used to it. The market's kind of forgotten about it. I was talking to some of the capital markets guys here. And they had a party for 20 years, right? And they're sort of like, party's over, right? And so now what do you do? Well, I mean, you go back to fundamentals. People still occupy space. You have to look at the big picture. You've got to think about, what your purpose and what drives you as an individual, what drives you as a company. And this too shall pass. The good thing about capitalism, to the extent we still have it, which I'll avoid the socialist rabbit hole and how the world's going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
The good thing about free markets is they adjust, and they adjust to clear, right? So if you have excess supply or excess demand, something will happen to right size it in due course. And I don't think we're in a really, really bad place. It seems like it compared to where we were. Interest rates have never been this high. Well, never this high in like years.
Right.
But in decades, they're still quite low when you have that perspective. And I look at our pro formas and our jobs, higher interest rates are a drag for sure. Interest costs are higher. It affects consumer behavior. People go, oh my goodness, interest rates are high and there's inflation, there's going to be a recession. My God, and they freeze. They don't buy the house. They don't expand and rent the new store space or take on the new distribution space, that they hesitate. I think that's the bigger cost of rising interest rates. But these interest rates are a level that are still workable. They're not catastrophic. I mean, cap rates are creeping up a bit. How much more will they creep up? I don't know. Not much. Will they creep down a bit? Maybe a little bit. Maybe we're going to a new normal where interest rates are higher than they've been for the last 10 years, and especially the last 2. I mean, that was like a freebie. Like the idea that was normal is ridiculous, right? So I think that, interest rates are going to, come down a bit in due course. Probably first quarter of 2024. It depends on what bank economists you listen to and what month, right? But sometime in the not too distant future, they'll moderate. They're not going back to where they were. Go down a bit.
Do you think we're just going to take off at that point?
That we're going to take off?
Yes.
No. No, take off. The whole boom bust thing, that's for the media, right? It's either really hard or it's normal, and sometimes it feels really good. But really, most of the time it's normal. But as soon as it adjusts a bit, we're in a culture of, sensationalism. And so it's like, oh, it's a boom. Apparently Calgary's booming right now. It isn't. Ask anyone who owns an office building if it's booming in Calgary, right? It's growing again. Hey, hallelujah, it's growing again. After hitting your head against the wall for 6 freaking years, it feels fantastic. But that's because you're not hitting your head against the wall anymore. Right. That's not a boom. We're going to a kind of a normal market. So, we have sold a bunch of lots last year. Our builders sold a bunch of houses, especially in Calgary. Edmonton's still pretty soft, right? Like office market's like way oversupplied. Distribution space is working because it's so expensive elsewhere in the country, in Ontario, and especially in Vancouver. But I like to call it's like kind of normal. Like it's going to a market that's somewhat reliable, depending on the asset class you're in. That's great, but that's not coming back hard or coming back fast. I think we'll go to a place where all the people in the world who are scared because of what they're reading in the media or because of how they feel about interest rates or their own personal situations, because rising interest rates, it is hard, especially if you're over leveraged, right? Which we never are. We are just right. We love leverage, but just the right amount, right? Like there is hardship for sure. And there will be some financial distress we're seeing in the banking sector of the United States. It's not an epidemic. It's not bank contagion. It's like if you're a regional bank and you invested in bonds instead of getting deposits, right, or whatever, and hedging properly, you got killed when the bond market went down, and or the rates went up and the value of your assets went down, right?
Can you see any sort of like black swan, anything that cracks into the Canadian market and affects us in some way?
Well, the interesting thing about black swans is nobody sees them coming, right? And then after they come, they said, well, of course. And you get these pundits, especially with that capital economics group, they're always so negative. It was like, well, we've been predicting this for years. Well, if you predict black swan events every quarter for 10 years, eventually you'll be right.
Yeah. Right.
But you're wrong most of the time if people stop listening to you, right? So will there be a black swan event? I don't think so. But I didn't think there was going to be one in 2022 because I didn't think Putin would be stupid enough and vain enough to invade Ukraine.
Right.
Whatever your perspective is on that, I can't believe the conspiracy theorists in that, but that's a whole other discussion that was a real estate conversation.
Yes.
Except that stuff like that comes back to affect, the world and public policy and the economy and fiscal policy and monetary policy, which really affects real estate, affects all business, right? So all these esoteric things that happen are actually very important to think about. So when you think about black swan events, you don't think about something that happens in the real estate industry. You think about what's going to happen in the world that's going to mess things up or make things way better. We'll call those, I don't know, what's the opposite of a black swan event?
White swan.
Okay,
Swan.
one of those. A swan event.
White swan?
A beautiful swan. Like when the pandemic happened, I thought the world was going to end. For about a week, I just thought, this is really bad. I woke up and said, life's work for 1 billion people down the tubes, and we're going to take everybody with us, right? And then it kind of, moderated a bit, and we kind of found a way to work from. Thank goodness was it Skype in the beginning before it turned into Teams and Zoom
and stuff, yeah.
And we could kind of make, which has all these other sort of boiled frog issues, which we'll probably get to in a bit, this whole work from home thing. But back to the black swan thing. I don't think so, right? Okay. I think that people are resilient. There's a lot of people who suck in the world. We can look at those people, they're high profile, and you go, this is really depressing.
Yeah.
But there's way, 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 way more people who are phenomenal, who can think clearly and lead and innovate. And those people, if you leave them alone, they'll rise up. If you keep telling them what to do, they won't. But I think that we're already adjusting, right? So if you go forward, what could make things worse? Like a nuclear bomb getting lobbed in Kiev, that wouldn't be great. That would be not good.
That would be a definite black swan.
China saying, hey, it's never been better to go grab Taiwan. Those types of things will just, that would really wreck what we're going to recover to.
But
I don't think that's going to happen, right? But it might.
What about the white swan event? Like when you think about, if there is no black swan, then things are just as normal. Then how do you think about your diversified strategy?
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's going to be some sort of new thing that quickly just bounces back. I think you gradually work your way out of these things. You're in a current. You guys are too young. You used to swim side stroke when you took swimming lessons in addition to the other strokes. You swim side stroke out of the raging river with the current, right? You don't fight it too hard.
Right.
I really think that's a good metaphor for how you get out of economic malaise. If government can settle down a bit, apply a little bit of industrial policy leadership, which isn't going to happen in Canada today, but a little bit of that, the fiscal policy doesn't work against monetary policy. I mean, it's nuts if you're trying to tame inflation. Now the government double down on expenditures. if government can sort of get its act together, if it can coordinate the provinces, if it can create some sort of a framework for like a national housing policy that's sort of bought into by the world, if we can start doing things like that, and then you leave entrepreneurs alone to do their own thing and markets alone to do their own thing, they'll work their way out of it. We'll find a way to balance, right? But and just on that note, we are still unbalanced, like in the housing market. You know, they call it the housing crisis.
Yeah, always.
Okay, we've had a housing crisis since 1867, right? Like we have more people coming here, we have homes, we have to figure out how to build them. And there have been times in history where everything's working. Like after World War II, it was working because everyone worked together to build a shit ton of houses for people coming home from the war.
Right.
And for a world that was recovering and starting to grow again, and then for the ensuing baby boom. And now we don't have that. We have kind of, I would say, on the public side, complete dysfunction. You know, there's no national policy. There's no federal policy of like, hey, if we're going to have 400,000 or 500,000 immigrants a year and 100,000 students coming to the country and only so many dying, we're going to be shortage of housing. So what are we going to do to we're going to work with the provincial housing minister, figure out what their policies are. Then we're going to work with the local development communities, and we're going to figure out a way to speed up the approval process. Like in Vancouver, if you buy a site, we had a site that was fully zoned. To get the development permit took 3 years. It was all about, can you move the bricks over this way? How about granite? We don't like the red brick. How about granite? Can we do that? How about, you're almost finished? You know, the chief planner just showed up. We really think that instead of having that townhouse in the corner, it'd be nice if it was a coffee shop. You know, go back 8 months and start over again. Oh, we're finished. You know, now that we're here, the traffic's a bit higher over on First Street. How about a traffic loop? How about you pay for that? You know, how do you build housing when you have this dabbling interference coming at you from somebody 2 years out of planning school who has too much? With all due respect to some very good planners out there, but
I feel
there
like
has to be a framework. There has to be a framework where you say the job is to get the housing built. Really, that's job one.
Yeah.
It's, your ego's got to go over here. Sorry.
Do you think that can come from the top down? Like you're a big
totally,
Trudeau
absolutely,
guy, right? So
absolutely. If I was the prime minister, we wouldn't have a housing crisis. You know, like I don't think we would. If other people, like if John Love was the prime minister, you wouldn't have a housing crisis. You know,
I agree.
You have people who are motivated, who know how to run an organization, who can link strategy to execution. Those people can get stuff done. And I think at the political level these days, largely because of ourselves, the electors, you know, we vote for good looks, we vote for popularity, we vote for with the feel good moment of at that time and when they're in the ballot box, as opposed to thinking cohesively about our principles, our values, our personal visions, what public policy platform is going to get us to that vision better, faster, having rational discussions instead of these insane troll debates and all.
And that's what it is, right? It is that sensationalism too.
Yeah, that gets them votes.
Yeah, and that's what, I watched a chat from Benjamin Tall the other day, and he's talking about how something like 60% of people get their economy news from social media.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just headlines.
Yeah. RT Now, which was this Russian news propaganda channel that a lot of Canadians listen to and think that's the truth, right? Like there's that disruption, you know, from social media for sure. But getting back to leadership, if we had strong leadership across the board in a strong federal cabinet and a provincial cabinet, and at a city government, and everyone was aligned on a common purpose, which is let's build a lot of housing for everybody, instead of, you know, picking on the rich people or the immigrants or, you know, that foreign buying thing. That's kind of a xenophobia, really, if you ask me. It's this myth that the housing market's distorted in Canada because too many rich people from Hong Kong or Singapore buy homes here, you know, and it's really, we have a lot of immigrants. And so when you see people buying houses and they have accents, you know, it's not because they're foreigners dominating the market. It's because they're Canadians trying to get ahead. New Canadians, the kind of work their butts off to help drive the economy, right? And so you need good leaders would out that. And they would say, this is what's really going on. They wouldn't promote false narratives. They wouldn't create bad policy to counteract false narratives. And they would get on with things. So, I mean, I think that's a huge issue for Western civilization, frankly, not just Canada. But I think that if that corrected itself, and that won't happen overnight, so that's not like this magic moment with the white swan thing. Yeah. It would, you know, that's a decision by us that we're not going to vote for shitty leaders anymore. And we're going to encourage good people who don't want to take on getting, you know, character assassinated in social media. to then step up and step in. I think that would really help the world in every respect. And I think ultimately it would help the housing market and so on. So,
yeah. We'll see. I'm a little bit pessimistic on that front. I don't
on the leadership.
I don't see the voters voting in. The leader
Well, I mean, but I think that where that comes from is people like, okay, in this right now is talking about it. I mean, this is a real estate discussion. We're talking about, federal leadership or global leadership or public policy. If you make it important by talking about it and shining a light on it, I think then ultimately you'll win the day. Do you think the quality of interaction on social media is improving, or on Twitter, is it getting better or worse?
Rapidly decaying.
It is.
Yeah. I think most people are just on, forget Twitter. It's TikTok. It's all the 10-second soundbite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had trouble with those 172 characters in Twitter. I closed my Twitter account. I just didn't want to spend any time looking at it. I'd rather read a book. I'd rather have this conversation with you guys. I'd rather think. The other thing, in addition to thinking about leadership and policy we keep talking about, we'd be thinking about basic stuff like philosophy and history. If you think about the essence of life and the purpose of life and the meaning of life, and you engage in those conversations that you could never do on TikTok in 10 seconds, you actually have to read a bunch of books and you have to engage in discussion. People used to do
reflect.
That. Yeah, like book clubs, and you go to university and join the debating society, or whatever it is. People would see that, and when they'd read the newspaper, there was actually good journalism in it. In the opinion column, there'd be the left side and there'd be the right side, and so you could. I'm not saying it was perfect. There's a lot of stupidities around since the beginning of time, right? But if we can shine a light on thinking and shine a light on how to make the world better and get people invested in that and seeing the upside in that, I think people would be happier.
Yeah.
And I think we'll end up with better outcomes. And I think when people are given a choice between, happiness and sort of pleasure, and they can see the difference, they'll pick happiness. Right. So anyway, that has nothing to do with industrial rents, does it?
No, but let's talk about it. So, here's a headline. Anthem's $215 million purchase in Burnaby tops BC's most expensive land deals in 2022.
Highest price. It wasn't most expensive. It wasn't expensive.
Yes.
We got a good deal. That's why we did it.
I didn't write that. That's a story.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. Journalists, see, they screwed that one up too, right? So
they got sensationalized.
If we look into the boardroom of Anthem, what are your priorities when it comes down to these different asset classes?
What's our strategy really? Yeah. So we have these three groups with all these business units I talked about earlier. So the objective is to feed each of them to the appropriate degree in the markets we're in, and so that's a high-rise site. It's a multi-phase high-rise site to be at least 8 towers, maybe 9 if we can finagle something, a multi-phase basis. So we really like that business in Vancouver. The key to the housing issue in Vancouver is to have lots more housing in all different shapes and sizes, especially small ones. We have a price point issue. It's not a price per square foot issue. To buy any given unit's expensive. So for people to afford housing, they have to adjust their expectations.
Right.
If you want a house, you have to create an economic solution for yourself that's going to allow you to buy a house. And most people don't have the ability to do that unless they get help from family. And a lot do. Mm-hmm. But those who don't, you go, okay, well, my reality is I'm going to have to aspire to own a condo, a 2-bedroom condo. And unless I, team up with somebody or, you create a solution, you have to adjust your expectations. The housing solutions within your control. And then public policy and the development community have to work to provide all those solutions. So micro units would be a solution for single people, 1-bedroom apartments for couples, or even studios.
Do you develop those micro unit style?
Yeah, well, I mean, that word means different things to different people, but things like in many cities in Canada, anything less than 450 square feet is deemed not livable. I'm only 5'7". I'm quite comfortable in small spaces. I like them. Right, my office in Vancouver is like 8 feet, but square. I'm 8 by 9, I think, 72 square feet. All you need that screen. You need your keyboard. I think to live, you need a chair, you need a table. If you need space, you need a coffee shop downstairs. You need a street. You need a park. Right. So if you can adjust to your need for space by utilizing your entire environment, then living in small space that you pay for is much more manageable. So I'm not saying everyone should go live in little tiny apartments. I'm saying that should be one choice. So we should have a whole bunch of different housing choices. And I look at Calgary as an example of that. When we do these suburban communities, I think that city, together with the building community, has figured something out going back 50 years. And today, when we plan one of those communities, whether we want to or not, but we do want to, you have to build apartments, zone for apartments, like in the suburbs. Right. Where, density doesn't make as much sense, but I'll come back to that. And then you have to build, strata townhomes, and then row housing, and then fourplex, threeplex, duplex, and then skinny little houses on really narrow lot lines, and then slightly bigger. And the biggest house in a lot of communities is 2,500 square feet. You start off with an apartment that might be 500 square feet, and you can work your way all the way up to that 2,500 square foot house with 6 or 7 choices in between. And you rinse and repeat, and you do that again and again. So that's why you can buy a brand new house, small house in Calgary today for just over $500,000. Same house in Edmonton for with a 4 in front of it. And before COVID, when the interest rates came down, the prices were actually about $50,000 cheaper than that, right? So when you're that, so that's the other thing is you got to think about, poor me, I can't afford a house in Toronto. Fine, move to Calgary. Move to Edmonton, move to Winnipeg. Right. Houses are cheap there. And you go, oh yeah, I don't want to live there. Okay, then you better work your ass off to save enough money to buy a home in Toronto, because it's not a right. Just like this notion that we have a right to live anywhere we want and have a house sort of made available to us based on whatever choices we made in our lives, or choices we haven't made that were imposed upon us, and that's unfortunate. But what do you do about that? If you sit back and wait for the government to create a bunch of rules to force developers to do something they'll never do, you'll be waiting a long time. Or alternatively, you wait for the government to build that house for you, you'll be waiting an even longer time.
Yes.
Do you think that, in Alberta, you don't have rent control.
Yeah.
In BC, you do.
It's huge.
In Ontario, you do.
Yeah.
Should we just get rid of it?
Yeah. Rent control is okay. If you're a socialist economist or you're Milton Friedman, you both know that rent control is stupid. Right. You know that in the long run, it will lead to no new rental stock, and in the very long run, it will lead to a depletion of rental stock. So right now, rent control in Vancouver is 2%. Rate of inflation was 10, 8, 7, 6, 5.
Yeah.
Where it's going to end up? It's certainly more than 2.
Yeah.
Property taxes, all the cities. This is lack of coordinated government. Just have radically increased property taxes. Sorry, we had to. We know it's not a good time, but we really need the money to pay for all communications officers to make us look and we make stupid decisions.
Oh my God.
Right? Like, we got lots of union workers who, work from home, and I'm not sure how much how productive they are, because try getting a building permit on a timely basis. But all of that, so I was losing my train of thought here. So where were we?
Rent control.
Oh, rent control. Thank you. Yeah. So
it was the work from home.
Yeah, it was the work from home thing. It keeps coming back, right? But my thing is, my costs are going up, and the costs created by government creates rent control are going up more than rent control.
Yeah.
So that means my NOI might go down. I think we're going to get through that this year, but it gives you an example of what that is. So I think in the long run, it's not good, and I think that it will lead to, like, already you can't, free market rent in Vancouver. I don't know, call it $5 a foot. That's a lot of money. There should be rent control. It is a lot of money. There should be rent control, because we need to. That will allow a lot of projects to be economic. You create more supply. You'll hold it at the $5. But if you restrict it, what will happen is the rent controlled units will stay at 5, growing at 2% a year. But the new stuff will come out at 7, because there's a shortage and people are desperate. And so 3 people will rent a 1-bedroom apartment and all live in the corner of the living room, right? So it's really good politically in the short term, though. Somebody's got to put a stop to these evil landlords raising rents, right? Yeah. No problems. I'll give you rent control. Great, and you get voted in, right? And that's what happened in BC with the NDP, right? Yeah. But everyone knows where it leads. I mean, it's a fact. I mean, this has been tried and failed so many times in the past, right?
Right.
Yeah. As opposed to just simply building more apartments, letting people make profit off of it.
Well, I mean, the socialist answer to that would be, we know, but what we're going to do is governments can go build 50,000 housing units here and solve the problem. Like, okay, so the NDP, when they got voted in 2017, said they can build 114,000 housing units in 10 years. Okay, so they're 6 years into the 10, and they built like really about 2,500.
Yeah.
So how they can get from here in 4 years to 114,000? Well, they borrow things. They actually say they're on track. Can you believe it? They're taking credit for all kinds of things that had nothing to do with them, has nothing to do with government. But anyway, I sound like I'm kind of anti-regulation. I am a bit. But we need government. We need an orderly society.
Most people in business are.
We need a rational framework.
Step out,
The best thing for housing would be if government just got out of the way. Frankly, they're help mostly by getting out of the way, making things easier to build.
Oh yeah.
We've talked about work. We've talked around work from home a little bit. Should we jump in?
We should just get that out of the way.
And perhaps how it impacts the office market.
That's the tail whip. It's like I think there's humanity, community, and then the office market, right? So you start with humanity. It's really bad. Right. People are staying home if they have the choice because it's pleasant. Human beings without discipline will choose pleasant over meeting, which leads to unhappiness, right? Like you think about it, it's really pleasant. When it first happened, you go, this is cool. Coffee, pajamas, sit down.
I hate it.
No commute. No. I'm talking about the pleasant side of it, right?
Right.
It turns on, it's quiet. Turn it on, you go.
You got Netflix?
Hi, George. Yeah, you got all this stuff going on over here outside of the screen, right? And you go, but I did 3 meetings. I deserve an hour off to watch this. 2 episodes of, I don't know, some Netflix show. I don't watch it. And you go, okay, you develop the habit of not commuting. You develop the habit of starting work in your pajamas.
Right.
Again, the habit of taking 2 or 3 1-hour breaks during the course of your 8-9 hour workday while you're working from home. While you kid yourself, you're working hard because, you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And for some people, that's true. But by and large, if you look at most people, you can just look at the ski lineups on a Wednesday. You look at the beach during the first lockdown.
Right.
Kitts Beach was like the roads were empty, but Kitts Beach had thousands of people on it. Right? On a Wednesday, on a Tuesday, and a Thursday. So, but anyway, my point isn't that people aren't working hard, but their whole framework is adjusted to complacency. I call it boiled frog syndrome. You get in a pot of water, you put the frog, you turn the heat up. They can't feel the fact that their environment is getting negative, and they don't know to get out.
Right.
And I think we've been wooed into this sense of complacency. So you look at the people who are really hanging on to it. Like the civil servants are striking for the right to work from home.
Right. And you have to show up to the strike.
They didn't show up for over 2.5 years. And then in the fall, they're told, you got to come at least 1 day a week. Oh, really? That's terrible. I don't want to go to work 1 day a week. I want to, so I'm picking on them just because it's so obvious. And they're on strike. They've got it on placards right now. For the 50 people that aren't striking from, that's hilarious. See, these picket lines are tiny because people they're striking from home. Like they're too complacent to even strike for the right to work from home. But I'm not saying it's because they're civil servants. I'm saying it's humanity.
Loop it back into the office.
Okay, so I'm getting there. No, I think it's important because I think we're wrecking our society a little bit there.
I agree.
And then so now people aren't coming downtown as much. In Toronto is a great city. And, pre-pandemic, you would get run over at Union Station at like any time between 4:45 and 6:30. You get run over, right? Yeah. There was a Starbucks every 50 meters, right? Now there's one in maybe 2 in all of the downtown core. It's dead quiet underground here. I guess you're back up to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Friday.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Friday.
Not a lot of suits in the street walking over.
There's crickets, morning. But you know what? I think everybody canceled their entire.
This was just post-league game too.
Everybody thought we were going to win.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I've been here on Fridays when the Maple Leafs aren't. It's not even during the hockey season.
Yeah.
Right? And it's been pretty quiet.
Yeah.
So my point is what does that do to the vibe on the street? What does that do to young people wanting to buy a condo downtown for the first 5 years of their home ownership strategy, where they live, work, play, and they create a really vital urban environment where there's collaboration and innovation and kind of like people liking each other, right? Because you're doing so many cool things together, as opposed to stripping over drug addicts who are passed out in front of a door because there's no one there to make them feel less comfortable because no one's going in and out of that door, right? Which is a whole other thing, the mental health issue and the double down on drugs. And so our urban fabric is being really negatively impacted. And I think that costs us in the terms of ideation, like people just coming up with solutions. It's not just like, so what if the restaurant people can't make money? You know, they can do on pads out in the suburbs and shopping centers. You just lose that closeness of people bumping into each other and exchanging ideas. Okay, so now let's talk about the office market. Of course they're not in the office buildings because they're working from home.
Right.
And if they're coming in 3 days a week or 4 days a week, I'm a hawk, right? We're 4 days a week, you know. And I think that, you know, working from home a little bit for like, it's a busy time and you just need 4 hours to decompress to work without a bunch of noise. I get that. You have a bad day, the commute's going to just wreck things. No problems.
Yeah.
Just not a habit of it. But anyway, you're not coming to the office, right? So you just do the math. You go, how long will offices, you know, businesses keep an office for somebody who's only in 3 days out of 7? We used to do it for 5 days out of 7. Will you do it for 4 days? At what point you start giving the space back? Well, clearly you're going to start giving space back. Yeah. Right. So, you know, I was talking to a bank across the street on the corner, figure it out. I think they said they're going to get back 40,000 feet in the lease turnover, right? Because they just don't need it. Right. And then all the back office people who arguably are more just as efficient working from home, the introverted back office people, right? Right. How many square feet you can get back in the suburbs in those offices, those data processing places? Mm-hmm. You know, our office in Calgary is government, you know, on the first floor. You know, it's a bunch of bullpens. You know, it's not a great environment, but it used to be teeming with people. Yeah. You walk by now, there's like not one person in there, right? So what are they going to do? They'll start hot desking. I think hot desking sucks because you don't have, you guys kind of do in the brokerage industry, but you know, you don't have a home. So you're going to go to the office to borrow a corner in a bullpen. You have to race to get the best one. You don't, so you get a shitty one. So you don't really want to come to the office because it's not pleasant. Yeah, there's nothing there for you. You know, it's just something you have to do because somebody told you to. So I think this sort of, you know, humanity, urban environment, obviously it all intertwines to something kind of negative. But as it relates to the office market, I think we're in for a world of hurt, and I think we're only starting.
Not coming
to see
back
it
anytime soon.
No. Well, you think about it. We're going to grow. The economy's going to grow. So if everyone settles out at some coefficient of 5 days a week, so, you know, 3-4 days a week, pick a weighted average, 75% of, you know, 3.5 days a week. You're going to have to give up a day and a half worth of space, right? Now, I think some people, like we've elected as our day a week, I still have an office for everybody. I'm not hot desking. If you come in from another city, there's a desk for you, but you know, that
different.
Existed before. That's different, right? Because I want people to feel comfortable coming in. Now those offices are tiny, but it's theirs.
Yeah,
you know, you can put a picture on the wall, and you know, maybe that'll happen, but it's going to take a while, right? So I think it's I think it's going to take years. No, maybe not decades, but it's going to take years. It's going to take several years for sure, like 5 years. I don't know. I'm just happy that it's not my problem. It is in the broader context, but yeah, I'm happy I don't own a portfolio of like big office towers.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem.
Yeah. No, but there'll be movement. There'll still be deals to do, like leases to do, and you know, like there will be an adjustment. It's a free market, kind of. It'll clear. It's going to take time.
Do you have any questions?
Well, I was just going to say, just on the same topic as office.
Yeah.
And again, Dama is very hot in this type of area.
Office?
No, artificial intelligence.
Oh yeah.
Because you're talking about all the back office introverted guys, data processing.
Yeah.
Will all those jobs just evaporate?
Yeah.
Anyways?
Yes.
So
yes, 100%.
Yeah. Well, AI is remarkable and awful all at the same time, right? Yeah. Like the extent that it works, and it's 90% accurate 90% of the time. I'm making that up. It's something like that. Yeah. That's where it's dangerous. Because when you do things like drive a car, you got to be kind of like right all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be right most of the time because when you're wrong, you're going to kill someone, right? And I think that AI is, it's going to create. Ultimately, they'll figure it out, but it's a long journey to get from 90% to perfection. And you know, there's no real brain there. You know, it's just, you know, so we'll see. And then the second thing is, to the extent that people become dependent on it, we stop thinking. And we were talking earlier about bad leadership. You can get AI to pick your prime minister. You know, like it's like you lose your ability. If you give up your ability to think, you're going to lose your independence. You will end up, it'd be like 1984 one day, or Brave New World. Aldous Huxley, you should read that. It's
very scary.
Yeah, where we're just kind of, we get born, however that happens, and we live however we're instructed to live, and then we die, right? The whole concept of self-actualization, if we give up thinking, will go away. And that's really bad.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to take a long time to get to that point.
Yeah.
We've already stopped thinking a little bit. We talked about with social media, we rely on just, following our confirmation bias, right?
By the way, I like your view better than my view. My view is that it's going to take almost no time at all. And the iteration process for AI is so rapid that
and when it starts self-iterating,
I think we're all doomed. And, but
well,
I hope you're right.
Yeah. I mean, the upside is that if it works and it happens quickly and it replaces us, it'll create so much wealth that that there will be enough that you can tax the people who own it and give the money to the people who don't.
Yeah.
So they can not work from home and watch Netflix all day, day, every day.
Let me. This is silly, but I wrote this. If I can find this thing. Okay, this is a little game called. Actually, this is more a game for you because you will know the answers here.
A game for me.
Is it Eric Carlson or Eric Carlson? Okay. I was thinking about we should have done this with Bob Dylan too.
Sort of going, where are we going with this?
He's saying that Eric Carlson, your name, but then the other one with the K.
Or the hockey. Okay, so Garrett's going to guess. This is just a little game for our audience too.
Eric Carlson, the great hockey player?
I'm assuming.
Yeah. There's a lot of Eric Carlsons in the world, just saying, especially in Sweden.
He represented Sweden in international competition, winning a silver medal in the 2014 Olympics.
Yeah, I assume it's with the K.
Yeah.
Okay. He has led his company to develop over 20,000 homes. More than
I don't think the hockey player did that.
He was born in May 31st, 1990.
Clearly, it's me.
Yeah.
Clearly. Yeah. I mean, look at me.
Yes, exactly.
Started his company 1 year after birth.
Yeah.
I was hoping these could be like closer to, you have to guess, but no. Okay, that was one. You know what? I actually wanted to get, before we wrap up, I wanted to get your reaction to something. We haven't done a reaction video, and excuse my... So this, what I wanted to show you is from another podcast where they're talking about, they have a bunch of SpaceX guys on. They're talking about, so Elon Musk, his company recently launched this Starship, which apparently it's something like decreases the cost of getting space cargo into the air by like 100x or something like that. Now you can launch 100 metric tons into space for like $2 million. Something, an insane achievement, even though I think the media painted it as a failure. It's like
because it blew up.
But
was that the one that blew up? I don't know. No, I'm not really following. Elon Musk is too difficult.
So they're
doing too much.
Their objective was to just get off the ground and learn, and then keep iterating. So they considered it. Everybody was high fiving. But I wanted to just show you this clip. This is just like a 1 minute video, but I'm interested to hear your kind of thoughts on it.
What other economies now emerge as this cost down of 50x happens, and what else do you think happens besides communications and Starlink? Obviously, that's already a pretty scaled business. What other markets can develop here in the near term? What other economies do you see happening?
Yeah, I mean, look, Gavin could jump in here too, but the reality is once you can take that much mass to orbit, you can move anything around the planet very quickly. You can kind of go up, let the Earth spin below you and come down. So transportation generally changes. If you want to fly to Tokyo from New York City, it goes from being, a day trip to a matter of hours. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, there will be no more trans-Pacific or transatlantic cargo flights. I think in 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, you're going to need a big Starship fleet to accomplish that.
So,
are those guys scientists or economists?
Two of them. One of them's on the board at SpaceX. Other guys, technology guys. Where I was kind of going with that is, if that were to be true, like 5 years from now, they're talking about space cargo. Imagine you could send something or receive something from China in 2 hours.
Sure.
How do you think about an industrial logistics strategy? Like, what would be the knock-on effects of something like that?
Well, I think that you got to look at cost, right? So you said that this new rocket ship is like increase the cost 100x or whatever. Okay, let's assume that's just a ton of money. How much do you want to spend to ship lobsters from New England to Vancouver?
Right.
Do you do it on a rocket ship so it can do it in an hour, or do you just sort of fly it in 4.5 hours?
Rocket lobster.
Yeah, rocket lobster.
Yeah.
Hey, that's pretty good. But I mean, so I think it'll balance out. So for stuff that's really, I'll say stuff that's light, small, and really valuable and urgent, okay, that's a good solution. That's a great solution for that. But like iron ore,
Right.
you know, to make it defy gravity, come back. Look at how much fuel gets burned to launch 3 guys to go up in outer space.
Yeah.
You know, iron ore, no. Like it probably doesn't make sense. So any of these solutions are amazing, and they become part of a matrix of other solutions. And depending on value creation and measuring all costs, including environmental, like it'll balance itself out. So do I think this is going to revolutionize distribution? No, I don't. I think it's way too expensive. It's way too specialized. I mean, if we found a way to defy gravity in little micro units of something one day, like they did on Star Trek, you know, and you could beam me up, okay, that's going to change things, right? But something like this, it's just to be very early prehistoric days of something like that.
Yeah.
I know I'm not shaking in my boots. I'm not going to sell any warehouses soon. I'm not going to any of that stuff.
In fact, if it was true, it might lead to more. You might need more access. You might need more storage facilities closer to people's houses
and a rocket
whatever
pad.
It might be.
Yeah, you need more infrastructure to support that, because you couldn't do it with one launch pad in Florida, because you got to get the stuff to Florida to launch it. To then you'd have to have them all over the place. So that's why I think that the practicality of this, you gotta think about execution. Yeah, there's vision, strategy, execution, and I think that they got a long way to go. Like, not that I love technology, but I think we have to be very realistic about what it can do and when it can do it. If you listen to scientists, you're screwed, because they're so in a different place. Like in the technology business, where do you lose money? In research and development. Where do you make money? 50 years later on the 5th turnover of the company, right? Like, where you can actually put it into play. So I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's interesting. But I also think about the amount of fuel on Earth that's here that you have to get to put in a rocket ship to be able to do all this stuff. Yeah. The amount of carbon that gets created when we're trying to move away from that. If you had all distribution done by rocket ships.
Oh, my.
Okay, I just don't know. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I think using that rather than for really for special important people like our prime minister, when he has to really get to Paris in a hurry, if he could go on a rocket ship and land in Paris in an hour instead of 4 hours, maybe he'd do it because he doesn't have to pay for it, right?
Oh yeah, he'd do it all day.
But I mean, 4 hours, how much is your time worth? Like, so maybe there, so
okay, and
I think, but it's great. I think it's gonna be used more for doing stuff in space.
Yeah, and you said
satellites, space stations. And industrial military complex,
small and urgent though. That's, you said those could find
for distribution from a small, valuable and urgent.
Yes.
Got to be incredibly valuable to justify the cost.
You've been very generous with your time.
I know. I've kind of enjoyed it. I'm actually really late for my next meeting, but we didn't really talk about the markets themselves.
Yeah,
right? Did you want to do that, or you want to just?
Yeah, no. Let's.
Right. Yeah, we got caught up in the existential stuff, because I tend to do that. I'm sorry.
Do you want to talk about the markets as they are, or predictions?
Yeah. So you just sort of predictions. We'll just talk about directions.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So if we're talking mostly about there's no one market's the same. Journalists and politicians talk about the Canadian housing market. There is no Canadian housing market. There's factors in Canada that impact individual markets, like the markets in Toronto, the market in the suburb of Toronto versus downtown, and same in Vancouver. But the 3 big cities are Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. I mean the metropolitan areas, right? And if you look what's behind everything right now, it's our demographics, right? So we have baby boomers are aging out. That has an impact. We have 400,000 to 500,000 immigrants, 100,000 students coming and going each year. Behaving, spending money, doing things. That's really what is driving all of our markets right now. And one thing happens in one market drives something that might happen in another market. So if you look at industrial in Vancouver, rents for distribution space are about $25 a foot, up from $8.50 10 years ago.
Right.
Where they were between $6.50. It took 20 years to go from $6 to $8, and it took 5 years to go up to $25. Well, that's really expensive space. So that will drive industrial development in places where you never think it would happen before. Maybe you convert some old, dead malls, maybe generally speaking. It's going to drive distribution space to Calgary. So it's cheaper to get stuff in a truck, send it to Calgary, store it there, and then send it back to Vancouver and other places from Calgary rather than from Vancouver. So I think industrial in Vancouver is very strong and will always be strong because there's such a supply demand kind of. I would say it's balanced, but it's just like it's full, right?
Right.
So we had this. We talked about the housing shortage. We always have this shortage of housing, and so I think that there will be government. We have a socialist government in BC. It's going to affect the housing market for sure. They're going to play. They're going to want to build their own units. They want to tell people what to do. They already are with rules. Cities will continue to, but we all generally acknowledge we got to build more houses. So we're trying, but I think that you can't. There's no bubble there. There's no artificial oversupply. There's no correction. Land's not overpriced. We're buying land in Vancouver now to build rental at less than $200 a buildable. But those units have to be worth about $1,000 and just rough numbers. If land dropped in value by 50%, which it won't, so a $20 million site becomes $10 million, that unit's now $900 instead of $1,000. It doesn't really move the needle that much. So, we tend to look at these expensive mansions on the west side of Vancouver as being the housing market. They're not. They're very isolated. If you look at like a basic housing unit cost, land isn't ridiculously expensive. What's ridiculously expensive, it just costs a lot of money to build homes.
Right.
Materials are expensive. Labor is expensive. That stuff's not going down in price, right? So you got 0% vacancy rate effectively, whether it's on ownership or on rental, and almost all these housing forms. And you got, 80,000 people moving to BC each year. Prices they need a place. They're going to pay more. They'll figure it out, right?
Let's talk about picking this moment in time,
Yeah.
or late April.
Sure.
Now you look out 6 months from now, industrial values, higher or lower than today? We're talking about now. You're talking
How
about
many months
specific-
from now?
6 months.
The same.
The same. Okay. Retail.
Well, there's different types of retail. Food anchored retail would be the same, trending up.
Okay.
And then big malls, they're going away, right? Like,
Agreed.
fashion exists, but it's going to exist in smaller chunks, and I think that those types of properties will ultimately, over time, get redeveloped. So their value will adjust downward to allow that redevelopment to occur.
Yeah, for land, yeah.
Same with power centers. Right?
Residential land.
Same, trending up. 6 months, that's 6 months,
Yeah.
a year from now up, but 6 months from now, flat, trending up.
Office.
Down.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah.
It's going to have to go down and adjust, but to be optimistic, business will adjust, and wherever we end up as a society on the work from home thing, there will be people working in offices for sure, and we'll absorb the vacant space we have, and they will be full again. It's just going to take time to take that hit and then let the growth make up for it.
Right. And last one, just multifamily existing.
Rents will go up. They're going to go up by the mandated rent control amount at a minimum.
Right.
And I think that the 2% cap will go away because it has to. Inflation will come down. So I think NOIs will slowly grow. And I think cap rates on multifamily, right now, all cap rates have crept up probably a bit.
Yeah.
And then they'll kind of creep down again. They'll end up being a bit higher than they were, but not much. And so you take those two factors into consideration. I think multifamily is going to go up in value over time. It's kind of the only thing that will change that.
6 months from now, though.
Yeah, 6 months from now, I think it'll be flat to up.
Okay. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Everything that's growing is going to be flat to up. And then
Davis
office-
soundbite.
Yeah.
Jim Cramer. Buy.
Yeah. Well, I think where the buying opportunity, there is buying opportunity today because there's a capital shortage and people will sell assets to get capital to solve a problem or redeploy or whatever. And so you'll start getting choice that you haven't had in a long time. Choice to buy sites that are actually that pencil instead of racing to buy sites that you hope will pencil when you finally get through the approval process.
3 years.
So I think it's going to get a little more rational. So that's the opportunity, is a more orderly market, right?
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of
Thank
fun.
you, Eric.
Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't get too as specific as we should have on some of the real estate topics, but I'm happy to do that. But we got to get on with our day. So that was great. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
We got some great sound bites for sure.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Great.